Hey, what's up? This is Don for VideoFort, and welcome to another After Effects tutorial. And today I am going to be showing you how to create a galaxy using a Trapcode form. And I don't really need to say much at this point, aside from, this is what you are going to be creating with the techniques I am about to show you. What we're going to actually end up with after this tutorial is going to be probably quite different to what you're looking at here, because this actual preview, this is something which I outputted very early on in when I was still experimenting with just how to get this effect to look good, and I think since then I've actually been able to push the Trapcode form plugin even more, and so I think what you'll achieve with this tutorial is actually greater than what you're looking at here, but it's kind of besides the point anyway. This is more of a workflow tutorial, right? So you might be using a different image as a starting point, and so really what's more important is just the techniques I'm about to show you, and then you can interpolate those to basically create something which looks different using different images as starting points. Talking about that, this image here, I hope you can see the resemblance between this and what we've just been looking at here. So we got the color of the particles from the image. The image is also driving the displacement of the particles here, as well as controlling the density across the base form. So you've got the core in the center, and then you've got these spiral arms going out, and that's basically what you see on this image. So if you would like to be able to follow along easier with what I'm doing, you can go ahead and download the project files so that you're looking at the same thing that I am looking at. And when you're ready, we can begin. So I'm gonna go to comp. I'm gonna make this 1280 by 720, 24 FPS duration, 10 seconds, and I'll call this main. And hit OK, and I can quickly just create a new solid. Let's call this form, and if I go to effect, I want to go to Trapcode and form, and we need to make some adjustments right away. So if I go to base form, size X and Y, this is going to be 1000 by 1000. Size Z is going to be 0. I only want one layer going into Z space. And then particles X, Y, and Z, we're going to match X and Y to the size. So 1000 by 1000. And since size Z is 0, we only want one layer of particles in that direction. And this is what we get. Now it just looks like we've just created a gray solid. So let me go to world transform, and under X rotation I want to set this to -60, just so that we are looking at this at an angle. You could have done the same really using a camera, but I'm actually going to do that anyway. Use the 50mm preset, and just use the camera to basically focus, put this in the center of the frame, and I like this angle anyway. So once we have the basic base form, we now want to load up our image into the effect and start controlling all sorts of things. So if I go to layer maps, under color and alpha, this is where we load up the image, and you can see it's not showing up because it's not in this comp. So let me drag the image to the new comp button, and I need to drag this comp underneath my form layer and just shut the eye off so we don't see it. And if I go in here under layer maps, color and alpha, I want to load up the galaxy image into this, and I need to map it onto one of the sides for it to show up, and in this case it's going to be X, Y. And when I do that, you can see now that the particles are being colored by the image. It looks overexposed, and that's because some particles are overlapping, and by default the transfer mode is add, and so you get this thing where it looks blown out. So let me go to that and change it to normal, and now this looks more like my image. So that's the color finished. We also need to extract some kind of alpha channel from this in order to basically create that density map, where certain areas there's going to be lots of particles, and then certain areas the particles are going to be not there. Basically they're going to disappear, and that's going to help us to basically define the shape of the galaxy, because right now all of the particles are 100% opaque across the entire base form, and this does not look good. So let's go back to the image comp. Let me duplicate the image, and on the top layer I want to go to Effect, Color Correction and Tint, and then also get a Curves adjustment. And with this I want to create a lot of contrast. So we'll start off with something like this, and then create this kind of S-curve. Now this may not be exactly how it's going to look on your project. You might be using a different image. I've done this a few times before when I was experimenting, so I know this works. Okay, I'm going to press F4 to basically switch to the track matte menus, and on the lower image I want to set the track matte to be Luma matte and then point to the top layer. And when I do that, you can see we still have our color information, but now also when I toggle the transparency grid, you can see that we have an alpha channel. And so now when we go back to form, still under color and alpha, I want to go to the functionality and then set this to RGBA to RGBA. RGB is the color, which we already have, and then the A here basically stands for alpha. So let's switch to this, and when I do that, you can now see that we have different densities. It kind of alternates, so it's not dense and then it kind of gets a little dense here, and then there's nothing in between, and then you get the idea, and so on. And so the shape of the galaxy is clearly defined, much better than before. Okay, just a note in passing, I will say that you want to make sure that the comp with the image, it needs to be square, so that when you map it onto the base form, which is also square, it's going to be a 1-to-1 ratio when you do that. If either the base form is rectangular, or the image, the comp with the image is rectangular, then when you map the layer into this, it's going to be stretched or squashed in one of the directions, and it's not going to be a 1-to-1 translation of what you're looking at in this comp. So just keep that in mind. Another thing before we go back to form is that we're wasting a lot of space here, because what form does, with the alpha channel we just created, it doesn't actually remove the particles from the scene, it just hides them. So all of this area on the outside is still being used, and the particles still exist, we just can't see them, and basically this is just a bit of a waste. So we basically want to make sure that our image fills up as much of this frame as possible, so that we avoid wasting space. And all I did there was parent the top layer to the lower one, and then just scale this up and make sure that we're using up as much space as possible. Some edges may start to get cut off on the edges here, and so what I do is go to the top layer, double click the ellipse tool to insert a circular mask, and then if I double click this, I can just make sure that it fits within the whole comp, and if I press F, I can feather by 200, and then I want to go to expansion and bring this in by half this, so it's going to be minus 100, and basically this makes sure that nothing is going to be cut off by the edge. Okay, going back to the main comp, we want to go to the displacement section here, and here too we want to load up our image comp. So under layer for XYZ, I want to point to the galaxy image, and nothing happens still because we haven't mapped it, so we need to switch this from off to XY, and when I do that, it's gonna look like this. Kind of crazy, but you know, the effect is working. So the strength here is too much, and it's going in the wrong direction, so I need to basically invert this and also reduce it. So if I set this to minus 20, which is a value which I know works because again I've done this a few times already, this is basically going to displace the particles going up, and that's how you get this sort of a dispersion effect. Okay, just one issue here which I'll address right away. If I duplicate this camera and start orbiting around the scene, you can see that the particles are only moving in one direction, which is up, and here it looks as if we basically sliced the galaxy in half and then removed everything below, and basically it looks a little bit flat, and just something is lacking here. So what I do to fix this is simply duplicate the form layer, and on the one below I want to go to the displacement settings here and set this to 20 basically, so it's now going the other direction, but still here when I look at this from the side, we now have particles going in both directions, but they just start in the wrong places, so we need to offset one of these base forms so that the bases touch, and then you have particles going in either in both directions basically. So if I go to the lower, I can go to Y offset here and set this to 40, which is basically the difference between the two displacement values, 20 and minus 20. And now when I go back to the main camera and look at this, you can see that we have particles going in both directions, and that just gives it more depth, detail, and volume, and it looks better. Okay, so that's how you fix that issue. The only problem is now any changes you make to the top layer, you basically have to go to the lower layer and do the same. And so I like to leave that step until the very end when I'm happy with how the particles look. That's when I duplicate the form layer and mirror it to the original. So let's delete this for now, continue working on this, and then when we're ready we can basically repeat that process. Okay, just a few adjustments left to make here. I'm going to go to particles in X and Y and basically double the number of particles to 2000 times 2000, which I believe makes 4 million particles, quite a lot. There is a limit to this, and of course that depends on how powerful your workstation is, so just keep that in mind. If you push it too far, you will get an error message on your screen telling you that there's a particle overflow error, and at that point you basically have to dial it back. What I recommend is, whilst you're still just working the scene, it's better to work with something more manageable. So 2K is probably the limit for me. Whilst I'm working here, this is going to be very slow from now on, but my computer still manages just about. I might work with lower values, and then right at the end, when I'm happy with the look, I crank up the numbers and run the final render. But as far as just working in After Effects, you should probably err on the side of something more manageable. Anyway, since I doubled the number of particles, I'm gonna half the size. So instead of 1, this is now gonna be 0.5. So we have lots of small particles, which creates a more detailed look. Okay, way down in the settings here, I want to go to Spherical Field. And if I just open up Sphere 1, I'm going to set the strength to 30. And all this does is create a spherical distortion field in the center of the base form. And in this particular case, it lends itself very well to what we're doing here. You know, the center of the galaxy is very dense, and this bulge or distortion in the center here just kind of looks natural and kind of works quite well just to anchor the whole thing together. I'm going to double the scale X to 200, so it's sort of more oval rather than spherical. And I need to rotate it so that it lines up with the center of the galaxy. So if I go to Z rotation, I will set this to 50. Okay, I like how this looks. And as far as adjusting how the particles look and the base form itself, that's it. I'm not going to do much else. So this is when it's okay for me to duplicate the base form. Go to the one below, flip the displacement strength to 20, and go to the Y offset in world transform and set this to 40. And there we go. At this point, you may just want to switch these layers around and see which looks better. The top layer should be above and the lower layer should be below in this hierarchy here. Okay, another thing you can do at this stage, just to give more detail to this, is grab the original image, right? So let's bring this into... instead of just actually just grabbing this image and dropping it into the scene, before I show you what I was going to show you, let me just try and make this whole thing more procedural. It would be good if, you know, at the end of building this whole effect, it would be good if we could just, you know, if we want to change the look, you know, it's going to be good if we can do that by just dragging a new image into the comp and basically having everything else update automatically. And in the current setup, what I was about to show you, it wouldn't really work. So let me show you what I mean. I'm gonna go to the comp with the image. Let me remove this setup that we have here, and I'm going to pre-comp this image. Let's call it Galaxy Pre number 1. I'm gonna go in here and then pre-comp this again, and this is gonna be Galaxy Pre number 2. And now if I go back to this comp, I can basically create that same setup that I had before. So if I go to color correction and tint, and then get a curves adjustment, and basically do what we did at the beginning of the video. And when I go back to the main comp, it's still gonna just update automatically. The only difference is now, if I want to change how this whole effect looks, it's very easy. I can just go to the second comp here and replace this image. Only one issue here is that this is actually already scaled when it shouldn't be. So let me reset this. I think I saw something weird happening in this comp. And then in this comp, this is where all the scaling is gonna happen. So I'm gonna just bring this to the edges and then double click to create that circular mask. Let's bring this in. Let's feather it slightly and then bring the extension in a little bit. And now the edges, there's nothing crawling out of the scene. Okay, so that was something which I didn't originally plan to record, but I thought it would be a cool addition, just so you guys, this can be more useful to you basically. Okay, so now that we have that set up, I'm gonna go back and show you what I was about to show you before. And then what I will do at the end of the tutorial is show you how simple it is, once you have the whole effect built, how simple it's going to be to basically bring in a different image and completely change the look with a few clicks. So here we want to basically bring the pre-1 comp. Let's put this in between the two form layers, and I want to make this 3D. Let me solo this for now. And if you remember at the beginning, we changed the orientation of the base form by 60 degrees. So let's do the same here. So this is going to be -60. And it gives me this. And if I enable the top form layer as well, I want to line up this image with the particles on our form layer. And this is actually quite simple. You can eye this up and just find somewhere where it lines up, so you can see that the core is lining up quite well there, and we have this spiral arm following the spiral arm on the image. So this is working. If you want the exact value here, it's 64% on the scale, and that's it. I'm gonna get my ellipse tool again, just double click it, and let's bring this in so it's a bit smaller. And I'm going to feather this quite a lot, maybe by 600, and then go to mask expansion and bring that in by half of the feathering, so -300. And this is what I get. I think I can probably push this even further, so let's go for 800 and -400. And this is the result. I'm gonna enable the other form layer, and if I just switch this on and off, I want you to see the difference with the image sandwiched between the two form layers and without. And you can see that with it adds a lot more detail to this and just helps to sell the effect better. We just need to make sure that the blending modes are set correctly here, so that the layers sort of go through each other a bit. So the top layer needs to be screened, and so does the second. But that's it basically. I've noticed that in doing all of this, we're losing a lot of the color, but we can do something toward the end to try and bring some of that back. But for now, this looks very washed out, but don't worry about that too much. Let's just bring back all the layers. I am going to create another solid. Let's call this flare. And guess what? We're going to get optical flares for this. I'm gonna go to options, and the preset which I used in my preview was under motion graphics. You want to go all the way down here and get this sector golden preset. Click OK, and set this layer's blending mode to be screen, and basically put this on top of the center of the galaxy like so. And I can go to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, and then Fast Blur, and set this to 50, just so that's diffused and nice and simple. I'm gonna go to my flare and set the positioning type to 3D, and I basically want to make sure that it's in the world center here. A quick way to find out what the world center is to basically go and maybe in your form layer, and it tells you here the center is 640, 360, 0. So put those values into optical flares, so 640, 360 and 0 for the position, and do the same for the center position also. And there we go. So now when we move around with the camera, that is going to stay in the center and follow. Okay, moving on, I'm going to create a new adjustment layer. Go to Effect, Color Correction, and let's get some hue and saturation, as well as a curves adjustment. And another thing I will add here is a glow effect, so stylize and glow. And I want this to operate last, so let's just switch it off for now. And I want the curves adjustment to happen first, so I'm gonna create a lot of contrast here, something like this. And saturation, I just want to put the master saturation up, maybe to about 30, 35. And this is what I get. And I realize when I'm doing this, the image that we sandwiched between the two form layers is kind of disappearing there. So let me go easier on this with the feathering. Let's set this to 600 again, and the mask expansion to -300. So just making some adjustments to make sure that everything stays in the scene. And that's probably too strong, so I have to really fine-tune this. Let's set this to 700 by -350, and I'm also gonna just lower the opacity of this whole layer to about 80 or so, and just fine-tune this curve, because what we want to do basically here is just create the impression of more detail without revealing what we're doing. So I will just solo this by itself, go to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, and I will get the vector blur. And I'll set the vector map to the image itself, the original galaxy image, and I'll put the amount up to say 20. And then if I unsolo this, you can see the difference with and without. Okay, I think the flare in the center here is too bright, so let me put the scale down to 50, and maybe put up the blurriness to 75, and make sure I repeat edge pixels. And then I will go to the adjustment layer. Let's enable the glow effect. And I want to make sure that I'm working in a 16-bit color space for this, just so we have more latitude with some threshold controls like this one here. So if we dial this back to about 10 or so, we can increase the radius and then just lower the intensity. And this is just gonna create a diffused look, which again just helps to create the impression of detail and volume to this whole thing. And this is just one method of creating glow. This is actually my least favorite method in this particular case. What I normally do is this. I will duplicate one of the form layers, and we can go into this and lower the number of particles. So if I go and set the particles in X and Y to just 500 by 500, and then quadruple the size to 2, I get this. And I'm just gonna go to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, Fast Blur, and then increase the blurriness to 50. So I get this diffused look. And I can just set this blending mode to screen, and maybe lower the opacity here. And that basically does the same thing, except I just prefer the look, and I feel I can control it better than the standard glow effect. This still isn't saturated enough for what I want, so I'm gonna bump this up all the way to 50, and this is much more like it. I'm gonna go into my camera here. And another advantage of sandwiching an image in between the two form layers is that we can solo this and use this as reference for when moving the camera around, right? Because we know this lines up with the two form layers, so wherever the camera is looking on this image, it's much faster to move and much easier than if we had both all three of the form layers enabled. Okay, so this is looking okay, but I think we can make a few more improvements before we finish this off. So I paused the tutorial for a second there just to play around with the layers and see if I could get something which looked nicer. And I found that if I just go to these two form layers at the top and set the blending modes back to normal, it takes away a lot of those highlights, and basically brings back some detail which was otherwise lost by using the screen blending mode. I just happen to prefer this look here, and this actually means that I can go back to the saturation and maybe dial this back to about 30 or so, and this is the final result basically. Still, this look is not finished. Let's add a background with a little more substance rather than just black. And here I'm just going to drag the same galaxy image, and I'm going to go to Effect, Blur and Sharpen. And if I solo this, I just want to blur this like crazy. And then I will press T to bring up the opacity and lower this to something like 10. So, not a lot, but it just adds a bit more to the background. And let's say we want to have some stars in the background. There's two ways to go about this. You can get an image and just do it that way. You can create a kind of noise and then just play around with the brightness and contrast. That will give you a fake star field. But I thought, since we're already using a Trapcode plugin, I can create the stars using Trapcode particular. So if I go to create a new solid, let's call this stars, and click OK. I'm going to go to Effect, Trapcode, and Particular. And I want to go to emitter and set the emitter type from point to box. Let me solo this so you can see what's happening here. So it's in the center of our scene. I want to set the X, Y, and Z size to be 5000 by 5000 by 5000. So this basically. I don't want the stars to move, so I will set the velocity to 0. So they just pop into the scene and disappear. I want them to be there the whole time, so I will go to the emission extras, still in the emitter section, and I will set the pre-run to 100% so that at frame 0 we already have some particles in the scene. We need to stop the particles dying, and basically we need to stop new particles being born. So we need to basically freeze this whole scene. But before we do that, let's set the right number of particles. I'm going to have 5,000, I think. And then in particle settings, I want to go to the size and set this to 1. I don't know how well you can see this on YouTube or Vimeo, but they're very small, as you can see. And now I have this. This in itself could actually be a cool effect. You have sort of flickering stars in the background. But just in case you want to freeze the motion, you basically go to Physics and Physics Time Factor. You want to keyframe this over 1 frame. So at frame 0, I will set the keyframe. Jump forward 1 frame, and then I will set this physics time factor to 0. So at this point the particles are born and then they freeze. I can see a bit of movement between those 2 keyframes, so what I can do is offset the layer before the project timeline begins, and we'll just begin with particles which are frozen in space. And the reason why I use particular also is that when you start orbiting around your scene with your camera, these stars will move with it also. Quite cool. And you can still change all the other settings like the number of particles. So if 5,000 is not enough for you, you can set this to 10,000, for example, and there's just going to be more of them. I don't like this ugly particle up here, so I can play with the seed until it disappears, and there we go. Okay, we're very near the end here. I mean, as far as building the effect and making it look nice, there's not much else. There is just a few extras you can do just to make your scene pop a bit more and stylize it better. I'm gonna create a new solid. Let's call this depth pass. I'm going to click OK, go to Effect, Generate, and Ramp, and that's it. We just need to pre-comp this, and depth pass pre, hit OK, and if I drag this all the way down here and shut this off, I can go to this adjustment layer still. I want to load all my effects into this one layer. I can go to Effect, and I have a Frischluft depth of field here. This is what I'm going to use, but you can actually use the standard camera lens blur for this, but it doesn't work as well as what I'm about to show you. So let me use a Frischluft depth of field. I want to go to the depth layer, and let's load up the depth pass thing that we created there. And when I do that, I can set the radius of the blur to say 20, and it's going to look like this. I want to select my depth and just point to the center of the galaxy there, and this is what I'm getting. I think 20 might be too much. Let's dial this back down to somewhere around 10, and the stars layer needs to be below this so that it's affected also. And this is going to create a nice ramp blur effect. So it blurs out at the front, it's in sharp focus across the center, and then it falls off into the background. On the same adjustment layer, I'm going to go to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, and get the Sharpen tool, and maybe sharpen this by about 30 or so. And that's just going to make this really crisp along that center, which is in focus. And you know, all I'm doing here is just giving you guys some options as to how far you can take this. I'm happy with how this looks, and this is what I was talking about at the beginning. What we have in front of us right now is much better than that preview, which was done much earlier on in the development process. But there you go. Now you know how to create a galaxy using an image as reference using Trapcode in Trapcode form. Now let's get back to what we talked about halfway through the tutorial, which is how easy is it to change the look once you have it. So let me save this first of all, and I'm gonna increment this just so in case I mess this up completely, I can always get back to this. Okay, I'm gonna jump to Galaxy Pre number 2, which contains the original image, and here let me load up one of the images I used when I was experimenting. So this image right here, let's load this in, and holding ALT, I just want to drag this to this image, and that's just gonna switch that out, or even better, I don't have to remove that other image. I can just drag this on top of it, and oops, it still has that track mat linked up. So let me disable this and then go to the top layer and just scale it until it basically touches the edges, and make sure that it is centered like this. So about here looks good. I just want to make sure that this fills up this square frame like this. I have to go to the pre number 1 comp, sorry, this other comp here, and just make some adjustments. First of all, just to make sure that you know, the track mat that we created here suits this image. Let me also remove this mask, and in here we still want to have the tint there, but we want to play around with the curves and basically create a different curve. So this image has a lot less bright areas, so we need to try and put some of those in. So something like this, and still create a bit of contrast. I can tell there's not going to be much detail down in these areas, but there's still some up here. Okay, so that's the track mat. I just need to switch this off and then switch this one on, and I don't think I have to do much with the masking here. It doesn't seem there's anything crawling out of the edge of the frame, but just in case, I can create a mask and feather this by only 100 this time, and then bring in the expansion by 50 pixels. And that's it. And now when we jump back to the main comp, fingers crossed it's gonna look different. And there we go. This is what I get, something which looks completely different, and we did that in under 5 minutes. Of course, at this stage you could go into the base forms and do some further adjusting, but as far as a lot of the heavy lifting and you know, tinkering with every setting, there won't be as much of that because we've already done that. And that's why I like using this method where we start with an image and basically build from there. It's very procedural, and once you have your template, you can reuse it many times and get something which looks different. But that's it for me, guys. It's been a long tutorial, but one that I've been waiting to create for quite some time now, and one that I thoroughly enjoyed playing around with the different ideas and just developing this lesson for you. But that's it from me. For now, I will see you next time.